Let me introduce myself. My name is Dinker, the founder of Student Job Australia. I'm really excited to host this webinar, having our great distinguished panelists. And our main goal will be to get as much as possible, valuable information through our panelists. And I also need help from our attendees. So I need your support to asking questions, valuable questions, so our panelists will give you as much as information. So this session will go approximately 1.5 hours. And first of all, I would like to now introduce our panelists. So first of all, our first panelist, Kylie Rose. So Kylie.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Kylie. So welcome, Kylie. Kylie is the Director of Activating Career. She has 20 years of employment experience in a variety of industries, including banking, transport, health industry, state and federal government, education and training, including working as a career counselor in university sector. Welcome, Kylie.
Thank you.
Next panelist is Peter Mason. Peter is a Director of Mason Partners Consulting for last 9 years, which provides training focusing on leadership development, both personally and also for corporate environments. Peter has spent 27 years working for multinational chemical company, and also he has won many international awards. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
And now our third panelist here is Dick Lamb. So Dick is a founder and speaker for a Job Search Professional Skills Academy. And he is also a co-author with Richard Branson of the book Think Big. And he has over 20 years of corporate experience working with executives in over a dozen of industries, including 2 recruitment agencies, and deliver over 300 workshops on business, professional skills, and employment. So really great to have you all of our distinguished panelists. And this is our Student Job Australia, myself, and plus our team member. We are very delighted, and this is our, great opportunity to get some valuable information from you 3 panelists. And also, I really admire and appreciate all of you, because most of your valuable lifetime you spend helping people to develop their careers. You're helping people to grow. And now let's start with our first panelist here. I can start with Peter. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Fine.
Okay, Peter. Okay, the first questions before I ask Peter, I can let you, I just want to share my context. I was myself as an international student a long time ago. So the typical context would be a South Asian international student says, back in home, the focus of the teaching was English grammar, and English was seen as a learning and academic skill for purpose of passing the exam, not for learning as a living language of use. Classroom interaction were largely one way, and most of the English teachers at school were non-native English speakers, and the students were not sufficiently exposed to specific English language accent, and they never realized the contextualized language learning. So, I mean, pretty much I was as well grown up, the environment where we focus on learning language just to pass an exam, and the grammar was the main focus, where writing and reading, not whole entire communication with a contextualized. So we basically adapted, in that case, memorization technique was a very important skills we learn to learn a new language like English. And so as a native English speakers, like, Peter, so what would you suggest? What are the learning strategy, really good language learning strategy would be suitable for someone from migrant?
Okay, well, look, thanks, Dinka. And I do appreciate that everybody's got a feedback to each question. So I don't want to be like God on question 1, but please, my other panelists, please interject or add your input as we go along, because I've gone through the question and I've prepared some notes which I'll refer to and give what I believe is the best way to proceed in this direction. But as I say, don't take it that I'm I'm the god here, but I'm sure Kylie and Dick have their own opinions. First thing I wanted to say is that when anybody walks into a new community, there's a lot of nuances, which is a big word I suppose I shouldn't use, but a lot of characteristics about that environment that are new and are specific. Australia is made up of many, many, many ethnic groups, and in each ethnic group there are subsets. So when you say, well, Australia, how do I fit into Australia, whatever, it's very hard to, systemize it in some ways because there are so many facets. I suppose when the question is asked, we're thinking more about English-Irish. And in Australia itself, some states of Australia, including Melbourne and Victoria, New South Wales, Sydney, and up in Queensland, let alone Western Australia, they each have stronger and more pronounced ways of speaking. Looking at the question, learning grammar obviously starts with a book type learning. I was saying to Dinka, I did 5 years of high school French, can't speak a word of it. If I was to go to France, they probably wouldn't even give me one of their good wines, let alone one of their bad ones or whatever. So what I say to answer to that question is grammar and what you learn at school is important, but don't forget it's very systemized and logical. In the real world, all languages, all people speak differently and within their own ethnic groups. Accents, I think, was asked. Yes, that's as important in some ways, particularly Australia, depending if you, as I say, you're going up to Queensland or somewhere and they're very broad with their accent. G'day, mate, how you going? All this sort of thing. And that can be a little bit hard to get used to and or understand. But with any sort of language, you've got to assimilate and or immerse yourself into that. But as I say, it's not just Australia, it's all over the world. So I think there were, in the question was a statement which mentioned, how are you doing, as a way of connecting. Well, that's also American, not Australian. Australia is more like, how are you going? And I would also make a very strong point while I'm on that. Australians use a lot of the word mate, M-A-T-E. Now, mate is a universal colloquialism or part of language that they string along to try to, in some ways, build a bit of a rapport. So I'd replace how are you doing, American, with how you going, mate. How you going, mate. So it's a type of that. We say it quite quickly and use the word mate at the end. So it automatically builds a connection. Another way of starting, I don't know, I'm just sort of going through my notes actually.
That's fine. Sorry, Peter, sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah, go on. Maybe someone else.
That's excellent. So I can pass the same questions to Kylie. Kylie, would you share what would you suggest? The learning strategy completely. Many international students right now, they are in overseas and they're thinking about doing IELTS and other English courses as well. But what would you suggest? What are the best learning strategy, especially English language?
Yeah, so just drawing on some of Peter's points, in every state of Australia, there are different accents and things like that. So, for example, when I worked over in Dublin for a year on a working holiday before I turned 30, I was just an English speaker in another country where they speak English, and I had difficulty being understood with the Irish accent. Went into a post office one day and wanted to order stamp.
It's actually a lovely accent,
To be sure. I went into the post office to order some stamps because I wanted to post a letter to my parents, and the lady in the post office thought I was asking for steps. And she said, "What do you like? You can't buy steps in the post office. You'd have to go to the hardware store, sure." And I was thinking, wow, here I am speaking English in another country where they speak English, and I'm having difficulty. So I can only imagine what it's like when you come from another country where you speak another language and you come into the Australian context and you're trying to be understood. So some strategies for that would be to get out into the community and start communicating. So definitely grammar is important and learning the English language at school. And you said in the question that it's a one-way street with education sometimes in the South Asian area. I think in Australia it's more of a interactive kind of learning experience. So I would bring that strategy into it. And even in your informal communications, when you're ordering a coffee, try and start up a conversation with someone in your everyday, when you're at the grocery store buying food or you're buying a coffee, start up a small informal conversation with the person. And the more you practice, you build that muscle, you build that confidence in communication. Another point to make is about your mindset, and to realize that you've come from another country. You've got a lot of courage to come to another country, set yourself up in a new place, and you don't need to apologize for your accent or the way that you come across, because everyone in Australia is Australian and we all come from different places. My heritage is English and Irish way back when with the convicts and everything, so that's probably not a great story. But the point is that you don't need to doubt yourself. Just believe that if you have the ability to move from another country to study in Australia, or you have the intention of coming to study in Australia, the more practice you get out in the community, the better. I think there are questions later down the track about how to integrate into the community, so I won't go too much into that. But my strategy for you is in an informal sense to get as much practice as you can with people in the local community, connect, get out there and meet new people and do a lot of talking. Don't just stick with friends in your own
Comfort zone.
From your own background, your own community. There will be people from lots of different communities within your student community. So you already have your university or TAFE community as your point of connection. So you'll have something to build on from that. But informal communication and practicing as much as possible is the way to go. I also know there are some meetup groups when we're not in lockdown where students get together to practice their English skills, or with an Australian native speaker. So that's another way to meet new people and to go out for a coffee with the specific purpose in mind of increasing your confidence and ability to chat in an informal sense, and getting used to as Peter said, the different language that we have, and we have different phrases in different states. There is mateship and all of that kind of vernacular going on. But in your everyday professional communications within Melbourne, for example, or Sydney, you probably won't be saying mate when you're sort of in a formal work setting, but definitely in an informal setting, mateship is a very popular trait. So practice within an informal setting, and you can even do what I do with my business is practice interviews and practicing your business language as well. So, but practicing is the main thing, and getting out in the community are the strategies that I would recommend.
Excellent, Kylie, thanks. So now I want to just get same perspective from
Yeah,
David.
so I'm aware we're 20 minutes in, so I'll do this quickly, but I agree with Peter in that, what you learn academic about English, I mean, most people here don't know that, or the way the grammar is formatted. We don't worry about that. We actually don't care that much about your accent. Obviously, your accent will tell you where you come from. We just care about being understood. And I think if you show your personality through the way you express yourself, accent or not, as long as you're understood, you'll be fine. But as Kylie said, you just have to get out there and communicate, find places where you talk. Some people go to Toastmasters and find a bit of a group and chit chat with other people. Just find opportunities where you can talk, let's say, to the locals more.
I just, I want to add something, my personal experience, sometimes, the many students, they look for a job and they try in different ways, right? And sometimes it's really interesting. Like you never know your neighbor, like, next door. and he could be a HR manager or someone from IT, right? And you never have spoken, never say hello, and you end up finding like there's someone close to you. He could be, looking for people, right? So the idea is like, just saying hello, or just greeting or being social even outside your the area, community, wherever you're living, right? And that can also open not only communication aspect, but could be for in terms of job finding opportunity as well, right? So that was the thing I just remember. Now I want to ask the another question to Peter, because Peter is really he is he involved Toastmaster and public speaking and help people internationally actually how to develop communication skills, Peter. So Peter, compared to written communication, right? Written communication, you have a time to think, you have a time to analyze, and you draft your email and you send, right? Hours and hours you can think. But when it comes to speaking, right? When it comes to speaking, especially even non-native speaker, and I have to communicate with Australian or someone, and imagine like spontaneously, like a spontaneous conversation, like, I mean, you're dealing with your landlord, or you're dealing with sometimes in different situations. So you may, you may feel sometimes pressure as well. You cannot just ask, sorry, or 10 times, or, I mean, very different spontaneous situation. And plus you are like non-native English speakers. You may think back of your head, sometimes you analyze that information through your own language and try to convert as well, right? And do you think, this situation, and plus I'm adding other question as well, and same question, and sometimes you also come across where Australians, some international students, they said it's very difficult to communicate with Australians local, because they speak very fast and their accent, plus they squeeze many words into one, and it's hard to understand them. And so what could be the situation where how international the non-native English speakers can deal this situation? Can we ask like Australian speaker, local speaker, to slow down? Can we tell them to how can they deal, as an international student?
Well, look, I'll just interject there and summarise your question, Dinka. Even for Australians, sometimes it's hard to pick up what a lot of Australians say, particularly if they've had a few drinks. Anyway, so cut a long story short, don't feel embarrassed if you did not hear what that person said clearly. I'd rehearse a phrase in a way in that, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. I didn't quite understand that. I'm new to this country, or I'm learning my English. Can you just, say that again? Now, I would say that most Australians, I'd say 85%, would be quite happy to oblige and rephrase what they were saying, because most Australians are very polite in that way. Some people, though, are very aggressive, and they say, oh, well, yeah, if you don't understand, whatever. But I'd suggest that most people would definitely want to help. So don't be embarrassed. Look, sorry, mate. And as I say, there's that word mate comes in again, because mate sort of diffuses conflict or makes sort of a friendly connection. So I'm sorry, mate, I didn't quite understand that. I don't speak English that well. Can you just slow down, or can you rephrase that, or words to that effect? And I would suggest that should be good enough for someone to repeat things. Yeah, so I'll just leave it there if anybody wants to add to that.
That's fine. So I can ask Kylie a different question, by the way. That's fine. So you pretty much, Peter, you're saying if you don't understand some situation, and the native speakers speaking very fast, and you can ask them, you can you can pretty much, you can ask them, right? Can you please repeat? That's fair, right? It's a non-native speaker, right? Okay.
The other, sorry, can I just add to that? When you rephrase back, look, could you say that a bit more slowly, or could you repeat that? Another thing is that as part of that statement, you could say, I really want to understand what you're saying. You're obviously got something important to say, and I really want to understand you fully. Because again, as the listener, you're giving credit to the speaker, which in this case is the Australian local, that you take what he is or she is saying very seriously. So besides, oh, can you repeat that? I really didn't understand. I don't understand English that well. And I really want to understand you better because I think you have something important to say. Now, I know that's a mouthful, but fundamentally it's building up the speaker so that you, the listener, seem more sympathetic, more open, and more friendly. I really want to understand what you're saying better.
Excellent. Okay, Kylie, would you like to put some of your value here? I mean, your comment?
Yeah, I think that's an important point Peter was making at the end there, that you need to, that it's a two-way conversation, but if you demonstrate the value of what when you're talking to someone and you don't quite understand them, if you're demonstrating your active listening and you're using your body language as well by sort of leaning forward, paying attention, focusing on the person, it builds up a subconscious kind of subliminal sort of rapport with that person. Then when you validate that with, I really value what you're trying to express to me and I want to understand it more fully, would you mind repeating yourself? You're building up that trust factor and you're building a relationship there, and the communication is going to flow more freely, and I think you'll make yourself understood with a combination of body language and being an active listener, which is a really good quality to have for anyone, particularly in the work context. And you'll also find in leaders or team leaders within work saying things that Peter was saying, like, I really want to understand your point of view more fully. So that's leading to an open conversation where the two parties are both valued and you get the right outcome as a result of that conversation. So body language and being clear and concise are my two top tips for getting your point across.
Excellent. So Dick, would you like to?
Yeah, look, I'll probably throw a little span in the works here, and I'll put it this way perhaps, is people probably be more upset about the personality and the attitude. So if you're a meek person, don't speak up. You can say whatever you like, but if you come across as hesitant and unsure, and unwilling to interrupt or have too much thinking behind what you say next, that's where people will get annoyed. And I think that cultural difference of trying to be polite and nice versus, oh, sorry, just slow down. I couldn't quite get that. Right? That's just a natural personality, but not being the shy, hesitant person. So culturally, if we talk about where maybe international students, people from certain cultures struggle, is not so much the language there. It's more the trained attitude. How do you approach those people? Don't look at those people as more superior if they speak faster. Just sort of say, oh, sorry, you got to slow down. I couldn't hear that. Now, you say that in whatever accent or personality that you have, but as long as you are direct and not, think about the nerdy guy who gets beaten up at school, right? They tend to be the shy person and hesitant, and people will get frustrated talking to them because they're all very indirect. Just be direct and speak up. And you'll take that into the corporate world where you speak up at meetings, you speak, you volunteer your opinion to your boss or even in your social circle. So that's the way I would look at it rather than try to think too hard about it.
Okay, excellent. So now I want to start with Peter again. So this is about like a more intercultural communication, because we are living today's like a globalized society, right? And it's becoming very essential, especially developing your effective communication with the cross-cultural boundaries, right? And for international adaptation, international job seeking, And then how would you think to develop your effective intercultural communication? It's not actually just communication like in general basic communication. We're talking about like more like, as you previously mentioned as well, because most of the international students or migrant basically in the beginning, when they come to Australia, they start living with their own community, and then it's make more comfort zone for them, right? They start feeling comfortable, and then that becomes their the habits, but later when they have to deal with the Australian plus multicultural society, completely different perspective, different mindset, different, the international, completely environment. So what would you think, how someone can develop that effective intercultural communication, the mindset skills, Peter?
Okay. So the key thing is intercultural connection. Is that correct? Is it question 3? I just want to make sure I understood the question.
Yes, this is like intercultural.
Yeah, okay. Well, with any culture, no matter where we go, including Australians to China or Australians to Singapore or wherever, it's not just language, it's not just, words. It's connection through a number of different ways, and that is through body language, through physiology, through tonality and various things, and understanding some slang words, because that builds rapport. So I hope I'm on the right sort of track here. I'm sort of all over the place. But intercultural connection is appreciate the other person, I think, first. Realise you have a point of view too. I take up Dick's point. We don't want to be too humble. In fact, some countries that can be seen as a weakness. You've got to, be self-confident, but understand the other person wherever you are in your communication. If it's intercultural, well, be aware of some different terminologies, some different mannerisms that are different. And there's a thing in NLP where you mirror and match. You try to pick up some of those, and that builds up rapport. So whether you're from Australia going to America and they pull out a gun and on the left hand, you pull out a gun on the right hand, and then you mirror and matching. But, different cultures, just appreciate that things are different, and then watch, understand and question, and then try to mix your behaviours with some of their behaviours.
You're pretty much, you're saying like matching, mirroring, right? I mean, if you because I remember there was a proverb, like if you go Rome and then act like a Roman, right? Something
Yes.
Right? So pretty much like if you're going to a different country or a different culture, then you need to mingle, you need to associate and try to. Someone said, actually, I remember someone said the food, food might connect people. If you cook food, your own your ethnic food, and you try to share other people in the community, this is the food I have cooked. Would you like to taste? That connect people as well, for example, right? What are other the effective the strategies we can use to develop ourselves in order to to deal with the intercultural communication issues and then challenges, because end of the day you are living in a global society, you're living in a multicultural community, and you
Correct.
living with the people with the hundreds of different nationalities in Australia, not only
Dinka, can I just say one thing? I'm finding it a bit hard hearing you. You probably see me putting my ear to the...
Yeah, okay, so
I don't know if it's just me and my hearing aid's busted.
Please, if you can all hear me, I mean, if I'm speaking very, I can put my voice.
So I hope I haven't missed. Yeah.
Well, so Kylie, what do you think? What's your opinion here?
Well, maybe we'll ask Dick and Kylie.
Could I ask Kylie right now?
Yes, sure. So with you say it's an issue of intercultural communication. I would say when you're living and working in Australia, studying in Australia, you're going to be coming across people of different cultures all the time. So in a way, you can remove it from the equation and just focus on having the right attitude and mindset when you're speaking to someone, to just be curious about where they're from, have respect, build up trust between the two people communicating, be clear and concise, and I think having a curious mindset about where someone's from. For example, when I have worked in the past on big IT projects, I've got people from India, China, Japan, New Zealand, Canada, lots of different countries, all Australians, all working to the same goal on the same project. So I don't think about that they're different and they have different backgrounds. I think it can even add a layer of complexity and stress to the communication when you focus on the differences rather than the commonalities, that you're both in Australia and find something that's a connection or some common ground between you two, and be open and appreciative of someone else's point of view and their opinions, and those opinions and advice will also be derived from their cultural background, obviously, and you both have two different backgrounds to share, but just being open-minded and curious about other people, but having a foundation of respect between the two, taking the time to actively listen and to just be present in the moment when you're having that communication. I think those strategies will help overcome a focus on intercultural differences and think of yourselves as two human beings connecting, having a conversation, learning more about each other and more about the world around you.
Excellent.
Does Dick want to go?
Oh, sorry, Dick. Yeah, Dick.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be my direct self. I wouldn't worry too much. The key thing is you'll pick it up if you start getting involved in groups. You can't guess too much. I mean, there's certain things you can learn, like maybe in some cultures you don't look certain people in the eye when you talk to them, especially people you might consider more senior. Well, we want you to do that here because we want to see the way you talk and look into your eyes. We want you to be more direct. There are certain cultural things we can look into. One thing that I found it useful to teach people about culture is this concept called power distance. There's a measurement by a guy called Hurt Kostidi. In certain cultures, basically the idea is people more senior than you should look up to them. And people below you, they shouldn't argue with you. In Australia, we tend to be more flat. Australia, UK, US, we don't necessarily are disrespectful, but we don't see our bosses much more senior than us, that we don't want to debate with them, argue with them. So I think that's one thing you could learn to practice. But I think if you start getting the groups and integrating, now I think the problem there is most people don't, especially to come from international students, they do assignments in their own groups. So you don't get the opportunity to chat with people who are local and be involved either formally in a group or informally. So my approach there is I can give it a bit of a science behind it, but just don't find something which is comfortable. What they find is growth happens when you have a medium level of disturbance. So if I suddenly stick you in a group where you just feel completely out of place, you won't learn much from that. If I put you in a group which is just people like you won't learn much from that. So find something which has a little bit of comfort, but a little bit of stimulation. So where you have to talk to somebody, or maybe half the group is social and the other half is like you. So find something like that, you'll pick it up. So I wouldn't worry too much about it as long as you find those opportunities. People who've been here might have struggled as an international student. After so many years of working, they don't struggle. So don't stress too much about it, but find those opportunities to grow while you're here, and then you'll pick it up.
Okay. Can I just add something briefly? In any human relationship, and particularly with a job interview, or if you're going to see the boss or somebody new, a person builds a rapport or an opinion about you as soon as you walk in that door. So when you are going for a job interview, you want to make sure that you, depending on the situation, of course, you want to be quite friendly, open and sincere, because people form opinions so very quickly. So the words you say, the clothes you wear. And the other thing I wanted to say, just come into my mind, if you want to build rapport, and that's how communication really starts, is after rapport is formed, say something nice about the person. A general point that you can see about that person that you genuinely like. For example, for a man, oh, that's a very nice tie. Or a lady, oh, I like the way you've done your hair today, or whatever. Depends on the situation, of course. But if you don't have rapport, communication will never happen. When you go into a room, that rapport is formed almost within 1 minute of you walking in the room. So the first thing is people can spot a fake a mile away. Be yourself, as Dick says, but be aware that people are watching and observing you. If you want to build that rapport with a boss, with a job interview, be open, be friendly, be sincere. And if you can say something nice about a person in a room or a group, I like the way you said that. That was a very good point. You're building rapport, and then after rapport is built, then the connection is a lot easier. That's all I wanted to say.
I would just want to ask more specific questions here regarding this cultural communication, because when it comes to cultural communication, then we have people from Asian background, people from South American, people from European, right? And we all have different ways of communication, different ways of facial expression, body language, tonality, and eye movement. There are so many things. Even within the vocal communication has so many different aspects of communication as well, right? And plus, like our cultural influence, like let's say, for example, the students might feel shy when it comes to expressing. Maybe the other students may feel more open, right? What are the things, like let's say body language as well, like the body language is there as well. Sometimes some body languages you're not supposed to use, like in a public area, and some body language could be offensive. So in Australia, but I don't want to confuse here the whole internet, but I'm talking about in Australia, like let's say if people want to follow the standard etiquette, like for body language or eye movement or any the professional manners, what would we look like in Australian culture?
So you're asking me?
I'm asking.
I think everyone. I just worried about the time too, Dinka. I mean, how long?
Kylie.
There's a few questions from the audience as well.
Kylie, so then I'll take some the questions from our audience. So Kylie, what would you think? What are the certain standard etiquette there, in order to maintain the body languages in Australia?
Yeah, well, following Peter's point about an interview, that somebody's looking and judging you straight away as soon as you walk into the room or as soon as you're sitting in the reception area. So perception is everything as well. So with the body language, I would just keep a calm, composed kind of look about you. I would say dress conservatively. When you're meeting someone, look them in the eye, shake their hand firmly, not too powerfully to overpower the person, but a firm handshake. Be consistent with your body language. Don't fidget, and don't cross your arms because you can look defensive. So just keep it open and lean forward a little bit so that you're looking interested in what the interviewer is saying to you. And this also applies to a communication that you're having with someone out in the community. You might be at a sporting event or meeting someone at a networking event. It's about looking open and approachable and tapping into your own authentic self. You don't want to pretend to be someone else. I know Dick said it's really important to be confident, and that is definitely true, and to be direct, but you also need to remember the type of personality that you have, and you don't need to apologize for that as long as you're speaking clearly and concisely and can find the right opportunity to make your point. Sometimes the most insightful comments are made by people who are very quiet, and in a meeting they're listening, they're observing, and they may just say one thing, but that one thing is a very insightful comment. And other people who are chatting and trying to take the limelight the whole time in the meeting, they're just making a lot of verbal noise, but the quiet person often has a lot to share. So it's about bringing that out in them. But in general, I think in the Australian, well, from what I've experienced living and working in Melbourne and Sydney and Perth, having an approachable demeanour, looking friendly, looking interested, keeping your body language open, and just keep your legs crossed or your ankles crossed so that you're not fidgeting. Just keep the focus on yourself, on your face, and a few hand gestures if that's appropriate. But we're not over the top with our hand gestures like in some European cultures where they're much more passionate and moving their hands about quite a bit. I think fidgeting can be very distracting in an interview. So just try to keep stable and calm, and that will also flow on into the way that you communicate and express yourself and in the way that you're answering the questions, because you're coming from a calm and centered place, and that's how you project yourself.
Dick, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, look, I think there's just some universal laws. And if I look at culture, one thing, perhaps one aspect of some cultures which is important is, adopting what we call communication cycles. So if someone says something, you listen, but you acknowledge that you heard it. So sometimes what I find is if I'm explaining something to someone of a different culture, I tell them I don't know if they understood. They might be nodding, but they've never said, oh, I can't understand that. So I have to go back and say, did you get that? And they might nod their head, but I still don't know. So that's the only big cultural thing that I would worry about at this point, because it's just part of communication. It's part of that reservedness, part of that overall looking up to certain people and not looking. So that's the only thing I would emphasize. But apart from that, I don't, like culture is culture, different people, different cultures. There's some people who are more boisterous. There's some people quieter. And you'll get the same within a culture as well as different cultures. So I wouldn't worry about trying to suppress your personality. Just communicate well, communicate and acknowledge, and then volunteer communication in return as well. Give your opinion.
Excellent.
If I could just, sorry, Dinka, if I could just put a point in. Dinka and I both have done NLP, and there's one particular section in all the NLP courses which says that in communication, 7% is words, 28% is tonality, or the volume you put on the words, and then 55% or something of communication is in physiology. So how you present, how you use your hands, how you sit, probably sometimes you don't even know what you're doing, has a major impact on your communication ability. As far as going for a job interview specifically, I would, as the person going for the job, be positive in yourself. You've got a message, you've got skills, and you should feel confident in that. As Kylie was saying, don't use your hands, be distracted, be contained, be smart. And look, that's the key word. Communication. The key thing in communication is smile. Be happy. Don't be an idiot. Don't go around telling dirty jokes all the time. But people want to deal with happy people, not miserable people, unless maybe you're an accountant. But, humour and being confident in yourself, and that's getting out and meeting people all the time, developing yourself. You go into those interviews and the interviewer will notice the difference probably between you and some other people. Physiology, use of hands to express yourself if you've got passion. Keep them under control if they're a little bit out of control. But they are a very powerful tool to get a message across. In an interview, you don't want to use your hands too much because you're there to be found out about, if you know what I mean, grilled. Always say something nice about the other person. I've said that before. And involve them. Anyway, sorry, that's it.
Yeah, that's fine. Now I'm just gonna pick some questions actually coming from our participants. Let's see some questions here. So Santosh, he is saying, how can you introduce yourself in a short way, in a good way, like let's say elevator pitch? How can you introduce yourself like a quick, short way? Anybody would like to answer this question?
Well, maybe I'll start because I go to a lot of pubs and I drink a lot and meet a lot of people. So if you want to introduce yourself on a social basis versus a business basis, in a social basis, depending on the situation, maybe the people you're trying to talk to or the person you're trying to talk to is having a quiet night and doesn't want to talk. But in Australia, there's very general expressions in how you going, how are you going, mate, or good to see you, or very general open questions about the other person. Those general, very open questions gets the person talking if they want to talk, or they'll shut up and go away. In a business environment, it's a bit different. When I was in sales, the first thing I used to say to the purchasing director when he came out is, how's business? How things going? How's things going? Right? But in business, it was more, how's business going? So that's about them, very general. They can say yes, no, or otherwise. A lot of answers I got was, could be better. Everything could be better. So I'll just throw that in.
Okay. Anybody would like to answer the question?
Look, I think there's different ways, different circumstances. Socially, what I tend to do is I introduce a bit of humor. I might fence with them a little bit. I might say, what do you do? Well, it's probably not a professional sense, just so you know. I might say I'm a porn star. All right, get some laughing, creates a conversation, create a nickname. But what you want to do is you want to lighten it. If you want to break out of a cultural thing where you're conservative and people expect you to be quiet. For example, if you're networking with a bunch of accountants, you know what they're gonna say mostly, right? So the accountant who doesn't say what other accountants are saying, who maybe doesn't dress like what other accountants are doing, are dressed like, that person's gonna create a better impression. There's gonna stand out more. Obviously, stay consistent with your personality, but this is where you would prepare a little bit. Now, a very simple elevator pitch is I do something for something to get a result. Now you can play around with that. If you're an accountant, you could say I'm a numbers coroner or something. Make something up which creates a little bit of conversation, a little bit of personality in there. So you can think about this beforehand and use it as lines. So that's one way to sort of break the ice. But practice, it's like most people can't do humor easily unless you think in advance and play with it. And most people will forgive you if it's a bit of a dad joke. Some people say, which is a bad joke. Right?
No, just because I need to go quickly on through these questions here coming from other participants. So this is one other question Santosh is asking as well. So how can we, because we've been talking about like a verbal communication, right? Basically, how can we develop our speaking? And then there is a different aspect of communication, which is writing, right? I mean, the writing can be even more, because someone said, I remember, in verbal communication, because you can see the tonality, you can see the person's expressions, body language, and there are so many aspects of the communication, right? But in writing, you don't see anything. You don't see the body languages, tonality, the stress, the word. You don't see anything. You just pretty much you see the text, and then you need to analyze, right? So that is one aspect, and plus the Santosh is asking, how can we improve? First of all, my question is, how can we improve the professional writing skills and plus academic writing as well? Kylie.
So with the professional writing, assuming that you have a job, you can look, usually on the internet, they have a lot of resources, particularly they'll have a style guide, which will give you some key tips on how the organization, that they'll have a particular language that they use, and they'll have some acronyms. They're like letters that stand for something, and you can get familiar with that. And looking at the way that your boss or other colleagues compose their emails and adopt a similar approach. But I would, when you're new to a company, I would keep it very, very formal, but also short and concise. So not, once you've established a relationship with a team member, you can probably throw in a bit of humour. I think humour is a great leveler. Like Dick was saying, humour is, you know, a really good tool to use to break down barriers. But I would emulate the work of your colleagues and your team leader when you're new in a job to establish what the standards are in communication. And these days there's a lot of communication by text message, by instant message, and people can get confused, and your intent can't always come across on a text message as easily when the reader's looking at it and they might misunderstand your intent, especially when humour's involved. So you just need to be very careful and mindful of being appropriate in the professional setting. And also in terms of networking, I suggest going along to networking events. I know LinkedIn Local have a lot of events in Melbourne, for example. You can go along. I went along to one in Melbourne. I didn't know anyone at all. I got in the lift with someone who happened to be another student of the same coach we had, Ruby Lee. So we had that connection, and you know, we're in touch and friendly on social media now. So we've supported each other in our businesses. So it's about getting out there and practicing, but just being clear and concise at all times.
Actually, you know, I just want to add on here, because coming back to my the context, you know, previous context, because I was telling previously, we non-native English speakers, you know, we used to we never realized the cultural influence in language. We never realized the language, you know, contextualized cultural influence. Like, let's say, for example, in Australia, it's common to say, "How you going, mate?" Right? And in common to ask people in the workplace as well. It's common to ask, "How was your weekend?" Right? We can ask them. We can give them opportunity to talk, opportunity to express, right? But these are the social the factors, right? The communication factors we never realize as well. So my questions here is coming to here is because, you know, many students we come across, you know, from different countries, and they have really good the TOEFL, like, you know, the English language test scores, IELTS, and then similar different other English scores. They might have really good scores. But in terms of, again, coming back to the dealing with the cultural aspect, you know, then it lacks, you know, I mean, for the confidence, and then his English background and foundation, the academic, the language test wise, if you see the document, really good, but in terms of the communication, effective communication, there's the issue as well. And in Australia, I want to ask you, especially, you know, what are the ways, like, if these international students, they would love to meet Australians, they would love to meet local people, they would love to, you know, hang around them. Can you tell me what are the ways so they can you know, they resolve these barriers, and then they quickly, you know, they develop these skills?
Who's that question to?
So this is.
Can you just summarize the last little bit of the question?
Let me put it. I think Dinka's asking, how can some of these international people go out and develop some of these conversational skills?
Yeah, my summary is, like, you know, what I'm saying is the action plan, like, let's say 1, 2, 3. Tell me 1, 2, 3. If a student who is watching your videos right now, if he wants to make friends in Australian friends, where he has to go. Let's say you gave an example of going meetup, right? Finding friends. What are the ways, like, what are the ways he can take action plan 1, 2, 3?
So this is to make friends, you were saying?
Yeah, local friends, local Australian friends.
Well, look, it's hard for people to meet friends everywhere anyway. Look, my suggestion, because I've been around the traps a bit in my time, First of all, you should go out with some friends, not just by yourself, with a small group. Go to a place where people are in an interactive mood. They're not in a formal sort of situation. Mix in with the type of environment that you're going to. In other words, it's a pub, which is different to a theatre or different to something else. And listen and just ask those general questions if need be, and break into a circle of conversation. And be polite and humble, and then as you get confident, then you can start to interject and put your own point of view across. That was my suggestion. If I got the question right.
Yeah, look, Kylie, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, so 3 top tips. I would join, if you're a student, I would join a student association in something that you're interested in. So you're going to have a point of commonality, and you're going to meet people of all different backgrounds who are students also studying at the same university. Another tip is to get involved in volunteering.
Sorry, can I interrupt here? But I just want to interrupt here. So I want to make more clear here, because what exactly happening is, this is a common issues coming from international students, right? I mean, majority of international students, when they study university, because they hang around with their own English as a second language friends, they don't find typically the Australians there, right? And also work environment, they will be, similar situation as well. And it's very rare for someone, the non-English speakers, to find English speaker friends, because of situation, context. They have a different context. Friends, university, same, similar background, work, similar background. So what are the ways, like, I mean, going sports club or going maybe meet up, what are the ways there, where I can find, if somebody asks me, the student local, so I want to make friends, I want to understand them more deeper level, you know?
Yeah, sport is a great leveler. I think that was going to be my 3rd suggestion, to get involved in a hobby or sport that you're passionate about. You're going to meet people from different backgrounds there. So student association and joining a club and meetups.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think Peter said something good, which definitely was useful for, I would recommend. Don't try to see if you can get someone to come with you. Right now, Peter gave us a pretty steep, tough task when you're going to socialize and break into groups. It's very hard to do it singly. I mean, that's something they teach probably in pickup or something. How do you break into a group? When you do it with someone else, it's a lot easier. People are more willing to talk with 2 or 3 people. It actually brings up your status a little bit. So it's almost like, well, okay, well, this guy's not alone. You know, most of us probably experienced that we are alone. We don't know anybody there, and these guys are having a good time. And how are we going to break into that? It's very difficult. So if you can find someone to do it, it's good. Otherwise, just look for meetups. Try not to go over the top, like find something which is really difficult, because that will give you more of a shock than it will actually improve you. The idea of a medium level of disturbance. That's when growth happens. If it's something too much, you get overwhelmed. If something's too small, then you won't really learn very much. So that's my suggestion. And come up with a few lines to introduce yourself, a little bit like we talked about, I think. Santosh, I think, asked the question.
I wanna quickly finish, because I have a few questions to complete here as well, and plus I'll pick questions from our attendees as well, participants as well. So let me now ask one-on-one questions rather than circulating all of you. So this is specific. I want to ask to these questions. I was thinking about asking to Kylie. So Kylie, tell me, like, because you are in, a student English speaker, right? So as a native English speaker, like, let's say, for example, what are the important factors for you making influence decision to see someone, whether he's a good communicator or not? Do you the accent matters? Accent, heavy accent, mild accent, friendliness, or any other, factors matters?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think you need to not focus on the accent as such. I don't think international students need to come from a place of weakness or apologizing for how they speak or their accent. The things I look for is someone who has a good intent, that they want to have that they are striking up a conversation, that they're clear and concise, and that they're interested in listening to my answers. So it's not so much we're in an equal playing field with the communication. I think international students have a lot of skills that they may not recognize as their strengths already from coming from another country, setting themselves up in a brand new environment. They're resilient, adaptable, and they're going to be strong communicators. So the accent, of course, if you can't understand a person because of their accent, you might have to ask them to slow down a little bit, equally as a person who might ask an Australian to slow down when they're speaking, that we talked about earlier. But accent, I think their approachability, their general presentation, and their conciseness are the key factors that I'd look for in a good communicator.
Okay, excellent. So this is one specific questions I have for Peter, by the way. I'm just interrupting this to circulating. I have a specific questions for Peter, because Peter is considering your background with public speaking for many, many years, right? I want to ask you, because public speaking, like is for many people, like, you know, speaking in front of people, like, it's a fear. It's a fear, even regardless of whatever nationality you are. You could be Australian, you could be any nationality, right? Speaking in front of people can be like almost like a people don't feel like, I mean, dying, but they feel scared in front of people. I heard that actually quote somewhere. So tell me the how to overcome, because speaking in front of public is very important in order to the upgrade yourself, you promote yourself in different job environment, right? So how to overcome the public speaking fear of public speaking?
Well, that's a setup question. I was very, very nervous at speaking in public and all that sort of thing. I'd break down. In fact, I was that bad. That's about, I don't know, 1,000 years ago. Number one thing I found in terms of building confidence and speaking in front of public, and that does not necessarily mean 100 people, it could be 10, it could be 5. I believe Toastmasters International helped me a lot. And I was in Toastmasters for a long, long, long time. And it improved my communication ability in general. I don't speak so fast. I listen to the people before I respond. It slowed me down, and it's made me a better communicator. So that is one of the things that I would definitely do to improve. And it improves your confidence as well, because once you can communicate well, you get better feedback, and it makes you feel better. So it improves confidence as well. So that's probably it.
I want to ask the same questions to Mr. Lam here. Could you add as well, because you are also public speaker, right? I mean, it may be relevant for you to add this.
How do people do public speaking? Look,
I
run sorry?
How to overcome the fear of speaking?
Look, I've run quite a few courses on it myself. Here's the thing. You have to do it. And you'll probably find by the third time, you get over most of the fear. No matter what I teach you, you can't go over the fear first time. So you have to do it a few times. The question is, do you want to improve after that? So what a lot of people do public speaking for is because they have something coming up. And once they feel like they're comfortable, they never improve. So you got to ask yourself, what do you want to improve? But if you just do it, you could do Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an easy one because everyone's there to support you. They even got a book for you. And you can just do it there. And you can pick up other things, like you start socializing. Most people stay in Toastmasters not to learn more public speaking, because they want to catch up with their friends, actually. They actually found that when they surveyed it. They stay in Toastmasters not to learn more public speaking, but to catch up with their friends. Only 10% of the people finish 10 speeches, right? But people still hang around. Like, it took me 2 years to do 4 speeches when I was in it, or while I'm still in it. But after that, I decided, I wanted to do more. And I think I've done about 300 seminars now. But Toastmasters started me there, but I couldn't have done 300 seminars with Toastmasters. So I had to create my own audience and promote my own seminars. So if you want to do that, then you just have to get up there enough times. When you get a new audience or a different audience or a larger audience, you'll get nervous again. You have to do that 2 more times.
Okay.
3 times, you'll get over it.
And so now I will just switch over to Kylie. And this is a question actually coming from Themai, one of our here participants. So she's, okay. So what is the topics that we should avoid in the workplace besides work-related topics, and what can we, discuss with a colleague to create a rapport? Like, let's say, for example, working in environment, what should be the topic you should ask a colleague to get to know more? What are apart from,
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the key questions I always get asked is, how was your weekend? And that opens up a conversation about somebody's interests. You can ask someone whether they have any pets, what their favourite sports are, do they have any hobbies, the usual things that you would ask when you're interested in finding out more about someone. I think rather than having a checklist of what are the right things to ask, I think being authentic and just having a gauge of the person, and then just asking a question. You might know something about them already that you can ask. You might see that they have children from photographs on their desk, so you could ask them something about their family and how old are their children, that sort of thing. But in terms of topics that you don't discuss, obviously there are strict guidelines in every organisation about topics that are not appropriate in the workplace. So you may not introduce yourself as a porn star, for example, but it's great. It's great to have a sense of humour, though. So it's a fine balance. But I mean, the weather is always a very, foundational, basic sort of conversation starter. About the rain in Melbourne, for example, is always a popular one. Coffee is always a big topic in Melbourne too. So if you talk about your favourite coffee place, that's always a hit. And of course, the Australian football, that's very popular in Melbourne too. So if you have a football team, that's a very common way of striking and, commonality with another team member. But I think just being approachable, as Peter was saying, smiling, and looking for cues from the other person to have it as a genuine conversation, not just saying something for the sake of it, saying that you like something about somebody just, to be polite. You want to be genuine about it and have it lead to a further conversation. So sport and weather and coffee are 3 go-tos, but it's good not to have a checklist and to try and be spontaneous and authentic in your conversations with people. But when you're not sure and you're starting out, the weather and how was your weekend are 2 basic conversations that won't be controversial and will lead you to getting to know more about your team member.
Excellent. So now
I'll just emphasise one point Kylie said. Just say, how was your weekend? How was your weekend? And that can go into sport, it can go into all different subjects from their point of view. So also very open. One of the things, just going back to the very beginning, also be authentic. Nobody wants to hear from somebody that's trying to make conversation with a list of questions. They think, well...
I completely agree with that. And can I throw in my 2 pence worth? There's an expression.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, be authentic, etc. But think about it this way, right? If you're trying to get the topic to make them talk, you are actually not authentic. You're trying to manipulate them to talk to you. So the other way to look at it is, why would someone want to talk to you? So the way I would put it is, have an opinion on something. Be emphatic, be enthusiastic about something, and be willing to talk about that. People want to talk to people who have opinions, not the fluffy people who are waiting for you to create the energy in the conversation, right? You have to create some energy. You have to have a reason why people want to talk to you as well. So I would twist it around, because it's common for the person who's struggling to communicate and have conversation to think about what topic. But the guy who's good at creating conversation, people want to talk about their topics. Yeah.
Excellent. So now I want to just double check here. We have another question actually coming from our attendees. So this one I'm going to ask to Mr. Lam here. So how to do a network effectively on social media site like LinkedIn, or using, like, you know, we're living in a completely virtual world, and it's a reality, right? And dealing with our virtual meeting right now, what we're doing, right? And now we are, I remember I posted up actually the status on my LinkedIn, because we are not only, you know, it's not only IQ matters now. It's not only intelligence, it matters like adaptability as well, right? Adaptability, how adaptable you are right now, how persistent, how, you know, tolerance you are with the situation as well. So we all adapting with the situation, and there are so many other things as well comes, but I don't want to go involved with emotional.
Sorry, what was the question? I
would just want to stick with this question actually. So social networking, effective networking skills, especially LinkedIn, how can you improve?
On LinkedIn, well, you're not networking on LinkedIn. You're just making contact, and if you haven't met them, you're not really networking. So if I put
effective LinkedIn communication, like, you know,
effective LinkedIn communication. Well, if you connect with somebody, if you met them, remind them that you met them. Don't just connect them, because how many business cards have people gotten? We don't remember who that was, right? Now, LinkedIn's got an advantage because of the picture, but I'm terrible at memorizing people. So I don't remember you. I don't remember your name. That's bad. That's not a good practice, right? So if you want to network properly, you need to remember people's names and their faces. But if you introduce yourself to somebody, connect to them, send them a note where you met them. Now, people try to connect cold sometimes, and I get a lot of them. And yes, there's some people who just say connect with everybody, accept the connection. But then I look at this guy and I can tell they're just trying to sell me, because the introduction is almost half a sales pitch, right? We've got some friends in common. I wanted to, you know, let's even get in touch and have some synergy. I don't know them, right? So one way you can connect with people, especially if people are more senior, if you're doing it professionally, is to do it in a way where you almost value their help, their advice. So I see you've done this. I'm really interested in this. I wanted to connect and perhaps be able to ask a question or buy you coffee sometime, and maybe ask how you did this or achieved this. That's one way. And I think most people in a senior position wouldn't say no to that. Like, we wouldn't say, oh, I reject this guy. We may accept, we may have to wait for them to set up a meeting, and we have to, it's when it's convenient for us, but we wouldn't reject that. So if you're going to approach somebody, it's almost like you want to value them rather than I'm here to sell you, I'm here to ask for a job. And the same goes to face as well. You know, a lot of these senior people don't want to turn up to some of these events because they know a bunch of people just going to ask them about jobs and catch up and blah, 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 right? Why would I want to turn up to that? There's got to be something in it for them. So the idea about a conversation, like networking is an example of a conversation, is we want to create value in the conversation. It's good for them and it's good for me. It's not, how do I manipulate them so they give me stuff? Yeah. That's not a conversation. That's not networking.
Okay, excellent. So now I want to see the last questions actually coming from our guest here, and then we're going to finish it up. Let me check. Okay, this is similar the question which we were discussing previously as well. How could we leverage our international background as a competitive advantage? How could you leverage our international background as a competitive advantage? how can we, so maybe I'm going to ask this to Peter.
Right, of course. Well, people are very valuable, and depending on where they're from and where they're trying to apply for the job, in other words, what is the situation, will then then apply. Australia is an international trading nation, and we need people of other ethnic groups that have understanding and language skills for other countries. Now, that's more applicable for some jobs than for others, of course. And how you maybe leverage that is, I assume you're going for a job interview or something, it'll be on your resume, and or when you get a chance to discuss it with your recruiter, you want to emphasize the importance of language for the job being applied for. Being multinational, having skills from another country are only of value for certain jobs. It may not be valuable. And for example, if you're a sheep shearer, we don't care if you speak Chinese or whatever. We just want you to do the job. So the overseas experience doesn't matter. On the other hand, if I'm developing my business or I'm a marketer and I want to introduce my product into another country, those overseas language and ethnic and or cultural experiences are very valuable. So it really depends on the job. You can introduce it through your resume early on. I've got this skill early on, so the recruiter notices it. When you're at the interview, emphasize it with the interviewer through the questioning process. And because you are, in some ways, if you have another language or a foreign cultural background, is very valuable. And Australia is desperately trying to export more. So make sure you sell yourself. A job interview is a two-way street. You are selling yourself to the recruiter or to the company, and they are trying to sell themselves to you, if you know what I mean. It's a two-way street. And the recruiter's got the responsibility to pick the right person for the right job with the best skills and the best attitude. Anyway, that's another story. But
Excellent. So
make sure you emphasize those foreign language or foreign cultural skills. Sorry.
Okay. So thanks. That's a great answer. Now I want to wrap it up, and I would like to ask our panelists, all of you. First, start with Kylie. Would you like to say anything else? Lastly, any specific program or training or anything that can be helpful for international students who has English as a second language, and or would you advise anything? Lastly, Kylie.
Yes, just getting back to when I first contributed to the panel, I think getting out there and practicing in your informal conversations is the best way to slowly and incrementally build up your confidence in communication. And I also think you need to be authentic and to remember that you've come from somewhere else. You've already got such great courage and resilience and adaptability and a lot of great employability skills to offer in Australia, and don't worry about your accent. Just focus on being clear and concise and speak slowly, and don't be afraid to ask the Australian or local to speak slowly if you are not able to understand what they've got to say. And in terms of learning, I think you're always learning on the job. You're learning in your studies, you're learning in your conversations with other students, to get out there in the community through student associations, volunteering and meetups, and as the other two men recommended, going in groups so that you feel more comfortable and you look like you're part of a group already, so your social circles will expand naturally that way.
Excellent. So Mr. Lam, what would you say?
Look, as a final, so you want me to see if what I can provide to help people? Look, I think my final word is, I talk about this idea of medium disturbance. You have to go out there and do some stuff. You can think and talk and do as much as you want, unless you go out there and experience something. The biggest mistake international students make is they wait till they graduate and then they worry about it. And that's too late because on your resume, we can tell. And I'll be blunt, a lot of international student resumes become unemployable because we know that you're not going to communicate well. You haven't done much except study. You can do internships, but a lot of people complain about getting local experience. And local experience is not actually about getting the technical experience. It's about how do you work with people locally. So if you show that you have done things, joined clubs and participated in this and done projects on the side of what you're doing, which is contrary to what you would have done in your country and what your parents would have done, told you to do, then you are going to be more qualified to do it. So that's my thought. On the side, I'm actually going to create a little bit of a survey for people and maybe create some content for people if they're interested about getting employment, about adapting as well. So I'll include things. I've got friends who actually talk about accent reduction. They can train people on that. I'm going to have a whole bunch of resources. So if you want to be involved, I'm going to send you a survey and find out what people are interested in first, if that's okay. I can, if you want, Dinka, can I just give my email address?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'll just type it in there.
Yep.
Yeah, feel free to just all the panelists.
So I'd just like to say something that...
Sorry for interruption, Peter. So feel free to share your email address.
My only point I'd like to say is that whether you're a student or a person working in business, you will find that there is at least some Australian that would like to go out with you and your group of friends. We're not saying you alone. We're saying a group of other, for example, Chinese friends. There's an Australian in your group or network that would love to go out with you, buy that person a drink, and he'll go to the pub with you and he'll explain all the different things that happen. The language, the way you behave, the way you order drinks, the watching of the TV, whatever. In other words, Australians do want to be friendly. There's somebody there that you've already probably got a connection with, and go out as a group, and that person can act like a mentor in the field and in the field of life, in the field of drinking, in the field of social, in the field of sport. And if you miss language, or you miss the language is too fast, or you don't understand what goes on here and why, that person can help. It only cost you a couple of beers, whoever that person is, or maybe a glass of wine, and have a very pleasant evening. Australians are what the word is, egalitarian. So we don't like status so much. Everybody's sort of around about the same. We don't like arrogant people. We have a tall poppy syndrome. If you're too high flyer, people will tend to want to drag you down, so you keep it to yourself. And we like modesty. We like modesty. No matter if you're a superhero, like, for example, the Thai guys that went into the mines or the tunnel and saved those kids, who knows? They're so quiet. Not tall poppy. People just want to
what is
egalitarian.
Sorry, Peter. What is tall poppy? The guest is asking, Santos. He's asking, what is tall poppy syndrome?
Well, everybody can explain it. But tall poppy is a plant that grows very tall. It stands above the other plants. It's tall. It stands out. It's thin. Got a big red bulb on the top, and it stands out. In other words, that person is sort of showing off or whatever. We don't like that. We like people all to be about the same. Doesn't mean you can't be better, but just don't show off. We don't like show-offs. So we call it the tall poppy syndrome. And a lot of our most famous individuals get crucified or cut down in the newspapers, for example. It's a cultural thing. So we get on with our life modestly.
Excellent. So I just want to conclude this today's session. First of all, I would like to really, really greatly appreciate all of our distinguished panelists, Peter Mason, Dick Lam, and Kylie Rose. Me, as a founder of Student Job Australia, plus entire my team, BJ. So everybody, we're very happy.
Sorry, what's that?
me and my team, we are very, we appreciate your presence today, right? We're very happy. And also, lastly, I would like to conclude what you have contributed, all of you. So the main important thing was like, stay out of your comfort zone, right? Stay out of your comfort zone, because when you come out of your comfort zone, then you realize so many things you have to learn, right? And also I'm concluding, and also making sure you participate in different activities in Australia, like participating in sports, going out, different clubs, different other activities, and try to be social. Try to say hello. Good day, right? Try to say, how you going, mate? Try to be natural as well at the same time. So your accent doesn't matter. Your accent, you can have accent. It's your unique identity. But at the same time, the pronunciation maybe, or speaking properly maybe matters. So maybe try to improve that one. And also, so in
Key
terms
question, get out of your comfort zone with other people. So you're all in out of your comfort zone together. So you don't have to do it all yourself. And that builds friends in your own community and brings your community out with other people. You don't have to do it alone, because that can be very isolating and frightening. Get out of your comfort zone with your other friends in the same comfort zone.
Also, the last point I would like to put here is language learning is not only just learning, memorizing as a university subject or course. It's not like we should not take it that way, right? It's like a lifestyle. It's like as much as you participate, as much as your subconscious mind, you do activities, you try to understand people, try to see the people, their perspective, empathize that situation, the emotional intelligence, whatever. So that is the way, actually, the actual language learning and communication developing, not like reading and just memorizing, right? That's the sum of you all mentioned as well. So thank you very much once again, all of you. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.